Hello, Lawrence, global citizen of the world. It's great pleasure to share actually your story with FastForward followers actually on podcast that we are recording for HTEC Group, and I would like to hear a little bit more, of course, on about you, about the company, about the global, and since we talk about the global things, and global trends, usually go directly straight to the industry and many things, but I know that you're also a big fan of soccer, I believe. So maybe the global thing that was quite big in this month, it's also Super League. Any feedback on that? Let's say global trial that they tried.
Yeah, so great to join you. I'm originally from the UK. I left London 31 years ago, and I've lived in California for the last 15 years. But one of my top passions has always been football, or as it's called in the US, soccer. I was actually born within 1 mile of the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, so I'm a Tottenham Hotspur fan, and I grew up with one of the best players of all time for Tottenham, a gentleman called Teddy Sheringham. So soccer is very close. The European Super League is a testament to how bad money can make people behave, and also a testament to how the power of the people can actually come through. So, I was very, very, very disappointed with the way that it was announced and the behavior around it, but I was equally positive that within 3 days the people voted almost in every country, and hopefully we're back to normal. So so although I am very global, I live in the US, I still have a huge passion for soccer.
Yeah, it's I like to compare this like global trends, how to fast forward with the Nassim Taleb, let's say, theory, and it's interesting how he's comparing this low probability, high impact, but this time, with this league, at least they made a huge PR. Let's see what will happen next. But I think the Jeferin and UEFA and actually all the fans of the soccer moved the things back to normal in a way. But do you see some trends also out of your industry that you see moving fast forward, that it's influencing the world from the global perspective, and that's touching all of us?
Yeah, so I think there's always 2 or 3 things that I think about in terms of things happening outside of my industry, or really happening across every industry. The first one, of course, is this new way of working, and obviously the pandemic has accelerated this remote hybrid environment. But actually, I think that was changing even before the pandemic, because I think people were starting to realize that with the availability of communication, with the normalization of global markets, that this new way of working was actually going to accelerate anyway. So I think that's one thing, and I think we've all got to come to terms with what that means, which is that flexibility is going to be a standard that people are going to expect. And I also think that's going to make a significant impact across all industries on the tenure in terms of how long people stay in companies. So that's the first thing, I think, just this new way of working. The second one, which I think has again been fueled a little bit by the situation around the pandemic, which is everyone at home now is thinking about everything they buy highly customized. So hyper customization, limited edition, and it's anything from beauty products right up to cars. So I think this concept of, which in manufacturing is known as the batch size of one, is going to proliferate forever. And then the overarching theme is that I think everyone's realizing, whether it's in a B2B environment, a B2C environment, or even just in people's personal lives, that everyone wants a goods and service to be centered on individual preferences. So I think they're the sort of the 3 sort of mega trends: new way of working, this batch size of one, and then the overarching theme is really, people want to have a personalized experience.
I agree. It's and more we want everything to be just custom made for us, from the small things, even from the bagels, or basic things,
Exactly.
and all the way to the cars. Yeah, it's with all this data, that's big data that's coming up. I mean, there's a lot of profiles that can be built around us, and
Exactly.
socializing, we're almost getting afraid of all the data that we give away, in a way.
Exactly.
Yeah. And if you move closer to the market, I mean, I will use the theory of the blue ocean, Kim Chan, that we met in Istanbul, and talking about value innovation, touching the fast forward on the markets. What are the biggest changes, let's say, on the market that you see? Can I call it digital market, or what could be, let's say, the trends more focused on your markets?
Yeah, so if I think about, digital, digital has been eating the world for the last decade, going through each industry sector. So if you think about the banking and finance industry, when do people ever go into banks? When I rarely carry cash. So, digital, I think is really eating its way through every sector. And whether it's work or telehealth or education, that's all been accelerated during the pandemic. And when I think in terms of the context of my business, we focus on the industrial world. So it's really people that are frontline workers, people doing what I call real work, whether it's in a manufacturing side, in a distribution center. What's really interesting is how the adoption of these solutions is accelerating, not because of the natural adoption of technology, meaning technologies just naturally get adopted at speed, but there are some other factors that are going on in our industrial world which are accelerating it, which is predominantly around the demographic and age shift. So in the industrial world, it's dominated by baby boomers. So you've got 4 generations working. Baby boomers, which are the youngest baby boomer is 56. Then you've got my generation. Then you've got millennials, and then you've got Gen Z. So you've got 4 generations working. And in less than 5 years, domestically here in North America, 75% of the industrial workforce will be millennials. So if you give me, let alone a millennial, 10 centimeter binder and say, read that on how to do the job, it's just not going to work. So there's a really interesting thing that's occurring where the frontline workers are demanding modern digital tools because that's the way they've operated in their life. So that's one of the really interesting things. And then the pandemic has highlighted, a number of really interesting things around transforming supply chains and figuring out how to build more resilience into that, more local. A lot of the issues around the industrial world at the moment is that no one can get products. The demand's recovering, but there's shortages in aluminum, there's shortages in foam, there's shortages in chemicals because a lot of it's single source from large parts of the distances of the world. So I think what digital is going to occur is put more resilience into things, more connectivity, and that combined with what's known as the grey tsunami, which is this retiring workforce that are leaving with all that tacit knowledge, is really driving the biggest changes in my market. It's becoming an existential risk if you don't deploy digital to frontline workers. In the same way as that, if you didn't have a mobile banking application now, you would not be having any customers in the banking industry.
Yep. Like how they're saying, there's no more digital, a separate industry, because digital is integrated in all of the industries now.
Yeah, you used to hear the term digital banking, but I mean, no, banking is digital. So you don't, if you're not a digital bank, you're not a bank anymore.
Yeah.
So I think that's what's happening in this industry, becoming a natural progression of technology, but the acceleration of frontline workers because of this demographic shift, I think, is super important.
There's probably some blue lagoons because there's quite big competition. I mean, big ocean of Red Sea in the same industry and even cross industry. Where do you see maybe a blue lagoon on your market? Market niches of the future, if you can call it.
Yeah, great question. So we're fortunate to be involved in the biggest market in the world. People don't realize that you and I that are sat at desks, that's about 20% of the workforce. 80% actually doesn't sit in an office anyway. So it's a very, very, very big workforce. So, and it's underserved, it's underrepresented. And a lot of the technology market actually doesn't understand this business, because most technology has been for financial industries, marketing, selling, not for frontline work. So, the real opportunity, I think, for us is that because we focus totally on the unique nature of mobile first, people walking around executing work, we're really empowering the human. And I think that's really where the opportunity is, that, it's ironic that it's a massive market, but the niche is that we're focused on the worker. And so it's a massive niche, but it's something that companies like SAP or Oracle, they sort of understand, but they don't actually really get the fact that the way those workers work is not typing stuff in. It's more like a consumer experience. So that's where we sort of see, it's a very, very big niche, which is focusing on the human.
Yeah, it sounds to me like we are building in the future kind of transformers, in a way, right, out of people, and not just being human, but giving superpowers actually behind what they can achieve with using this abilities.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, this is, I really do think about the term empowerment, because it's also super important that these frontline workers are happy, because it's very difficult to hire. Going to any place in North America at the moment, there's labor shortages despite the pandemic, because people have a lot more aspirations now. And so you've also got to capture their attention with these modern digital tools. And ultimately, what's so exciting about this is that we're capturing a new source of data, human activity data. Mm-hmm. Once you start to get that at scale, you can start to do some really, really interesting things, such as predicting when there might be an accident. Okay. Because at the moment, this is all dark data. You're paying someone to do some work. Do you know whether they did it correctly? Do they did it safely? The whole benefit of digital, it's an easy way to drive compliance and capture data on what really went on to basically improve the outcomes of people. So, there's so many injuries that occur in the industrial world. There's so many problems with food safety. Well, this is all because it's all dark data. Now you've got the ability to start to capture that. You actually raise the probability of actually a good outcome. So that's what's also really exciting, this new set of data.
Yeah. It's when I was let's say studying, one of professors really focusing on Toyota case, let's say how they did the process, how important it is, and actually empowerment of people to be able actually to be part of not incremental, but actually steady improvements on all possible levels, let's say.
That's right.
Building around the people, all the processing, it was almost impossible to copy. Just a lot of companies tried, and then Tesla came with a totally new process trying to break through.
Yeah, that's a great point. So if you think about the Toyota manufacturing system, and if you want to read some things around Professor Deming, who's sort of the father of the whole area of continuous improvement, that uncovered things such as Kaizen. Kaizen is a context of continuous improvement. What we're effectively doing is real-time Kaizen. It's not the suggestion box that people meet and then say, let's look at the suggestion, let's implement. No, the data is capturing Kaizen, and then you can get that turn. So that's why it's really interesting that these are very, very well understood principles that digital can now accelerate and make real time.
Amazing, yeah. And that's going to bring, like you said, many changes on the market, and also companies are changing, and if you look, for example, at your company and looking how to fast forward actually on this level, can you tell us maybe a project that you're most proud of working on in your company at the moment, or in the past?
Yeah, so there's two things that really, really excite me about our business. Why it's not only, obviously we are a commercial business, we do want to have a great outcome, but this whole concept of democratizing technology for the masses is really, really inspiring to see. And what I mean by that is that some of the fastest growth we see in our company is in countries that have been underserved with technology. So we have a lot of customers deploying in Africa, in emerging nations in Asia Pacific. So that's a really, really important thing, is that most of our customers are big international companies, headquartered in Europe or in the US. But actually, because of this mobile first technology, you can, and it's, you know, you can download it in the App Store, you can liberate everyone. So I'm super proud about the concept of democratization, because a lot of digital has been somewhat discriminatory towards a certain type of knowledge worker. Whereas we'll now, you know, the benefits of, you know, our market is that, and our type of technology, we can democratize this and make it available to someone in, you know, West Africa or someone in Cambodia. And by the way, these are true. So we got, and what's interesting about those markets, those people are super aspirational because they've had no technology. The first technology they've ever had is mobile. So guess what? They picked this up super. So the democratization to emerging nations is super. And then the other thing is, which is probably the most important thing for me in business, is this whole concept of ESG, which is all around, you know, social and corporate governance. And obviously a big derivative of that is sustainability. So, you know, we fundamentally believe in our vision and mission, which is all really about improving the daily lives of industrial workers and their experiences. The derivative benefit is that digital enables you to be more sustainable, because you're taking a significant amount of inefficiency out of manufacturing companies, which reduces waste and reduces CO2 emissions. And so that's the other thing I'm really, really proud of, is that in addition to the obvious use cases around efficiency and quality, the ESG use cases around safety and sustainability make me very, very proud that not only are we making you know, the lives of people better, but actually it's making the planet better. And I think we all need to pay attention to this, because again, that was a interesting discussion over the last decade, and now I think it's an existential risk if you don't take it seriously. So that's the sort of the two things I'm really proud of: the democratization of technology to emerging markets, and also the fact that you can use this technology to drive ESG, especially safety and sustainability.
Probably they changed a lot, right? In your process, you had really successful career in many companies, you know, more than 10 companies, if I saw right, you know, in developing. But what's changed most about your job or your career, let's say, is would you say you're more, let's say, focused on sustainability and these elements, or how do you look today compared to the, for example, previous companies that you started your career?
Yeah, so the biggest change is that there is no patience in anything anymore.
Yeah.
So speed and scale is really what everything's about now. So when I think about, you know, I've had the pleasure of working with some amazing companies, but if I really just look at my Parsable journey over the last 4.5 years, what really has been clear to me is the speed you need to move at and the scale you need to move at. You've got to figure out how you can deploy solutions really fast and at scale. You know, when I started my career in the late 90s, that was the emergence of SAP, one of the biggest software companies in the world. And I remember sitting in meetings with customers where they'd put up their implementation roadmap, and it would go for 7 to 10 years. Say, right, we're doing this country net. No one has the time or patience to wait for a year. So, you know, that's been the biggest change, is that you've got to figure out how to move fast, how to deploy fast, and how to deploy at scale. Yeah. That's really the biggest change.
I saw one quote that I really like. You know, it's not anymore, how to say, the big ones eating the small companies, but actually the fast ones eating the slow ones, you know, in a way.
That's right.
Yeah, big changes on top 500 companies that are actually erased. More than, I believe, 57% were erased from in the last 20 years. And it looks like it will speed up in the next 10 years. It will be even more, okay, acquiring or merging, you know, or let's say getting out of the list. And what I was really surprised also, that in December, it's the first year that we had 500 unicorns already evaluated on 2 trillion, but actually something what looked like mistake in 2004 when first unicorn occurred. It's actually today element of speed. Okay, let's leave how good they are, but let's just say the speed, how quickly they are evaluated. It's changing also, let's say, the perception of possibilities for startups on one hand. On the other hand, they're stealing the cheese from the classic industrial companies, probably. Yeah,
that's right. That's right.
Talking about the companies, I move quickly also to the fast forward on the product. And I really like this. It's not Milka product, but Seth Godin was talking about Purple Cow as different, let's say, product that's focusing on special tribe or special, even more personalized customer. If you look at these questions, I would like to see also from your side, what is your, let's say, product differentiation strategy? How do you see your company or product different than others?
Yeah, so we're in the business to business market. So we're a business that sells to businesses. But ultimately, we think about our users as consumers. So the DNA of our company is, enterprise class solutions, but recognizing that the end user is a consumer-like person. So we don't just want people to use our solution and be satisfied. We actually want them to love it in the same way that they would love Instagram or WhatsApp, because these people don't necessarily have the time or the motivation to try and figure out how to do stuff. So when I think about our product differentiation, there's been several interesting milestones on our roadmap. But what's always come above everything is our ability to do primary research on what's really needed by the end user. So we did that in the early days, and we constantly, so our product is wired to understand really what's going on. So people talk about user experience and UI design, but really ours is about how do they use it in their daily lives. So our real secret sauce is our ability to blend a massively complex back-end, scalable enterprise class platform with an experience at the consumer end. And it's actually very difficult to do. And then the other thing I would roll into that is that, it has been since day one, but it's really accelerating, which is that the data is increasing in our focus, how better to collect it, how better to ensure that the insights can be extracted, and then how to push those insights back to each of the personas. And so I think what we've achieved more than anyone else is this really interesting balance of getting huge scale of deployments, but with a very, very close understanding of what really is the data needs of the person that's executing work. And that's really where we think. There's obviously a lot of functional things. We have some super cool technology around how we deal with synchronization, how we capture data, and this whole concept of the metadata. But really, it's about this enterprise scale, but with a consumer-like experience at the front end.
You see, actually, the workers as let's say users of all this and
that's right.
So you're defining needs. You can define with all this data even needs before they recognize them in a way.
That's exactly right.
Can express them in a way. So you can say, let's say, combination of Steve Jobs in B2B, in IDEO in defining actually opportunities through data. Yeah. If have another question here also on product, how fast do you develop and for example redesign or move with your product now? Is it speeding up, let's say, the development, how you see when you have a lot of data?
Yeah, so we have like every company in the technology, we have a roadmap that has a 3-year view that then comes down to bite-sized levels of detail. We really do fundamentally believe in agile, and when we think about agile, we're often doing new releases daily, that may sound crazy, but actually once you get into that motion, it not only delivers a significant amount of value to the customer by pushing out new features faster, but you also drive a significant improvement in product quality, because you know that your speed of delivering high quality and your speed of fixing needs to be like super turbocharged. So, you know, we've now, obviously there are features that may take months to deliver and they will be rolled out, but on a general view, we want to be able to push software out, you know, daily, weekly, not months, weeks, and that's really how we think about that.
So as soon as you can, it's updated. It's not fixed, like comparing the let's say the software for Tesla cars and the classic cars in a way. So
exactly, that's exactly right.
Yeah. If you look then further, we'll move to the last animal. Let's say butterfly wings effect. I mean, more than 140 years old theory from Jacques Hadamard. You know, that this flap of the wings on one side can change the world, and on another side will make a huge hurricane or changes. And I like to use this on perspective of personal. There are people that can change with some tweet. They can change the stock exchange value. You know, they can change the some people just collect likes through Instagram, you know, with nude photos or something, you know. But of course, all of us want to make changes with personal. So maybe starting here, what was the biggest challenge you faced in your career? You know, how you handle it? How did you see in the past, let's say, the biggest challenge?
Yeah, so I think there's a number of interesting challenges that I've been through my career. You know, I've been in the enterprise technology space for just over 20 years. I think the first big challenge was realizing that there's a lot of things you can't control. So, you know, the realizing that despite everything that you execute correctly, there's things you can't control. The outcomes of companies has some level of randomness. And so I've always had this, you know, incredible drive, incredible, you know, winning mentality. I had to get used to the fact that I may not win all of the time because there's things I can't control. And that was a thing I learned quite early in my career. Once I started to realize that despite everything, you've got to deal with failure as good as you deal with success. And so that was the biggest thing, is realizing I can't win everything. I can't get everything right. It's about learning and realizing you do need to fail. So that was the sort of the first big one. The second one, I would say, particularly as I've moved around the world, even when I was based in Europe, moving from the UK to France, to Germany, to Italy, to Belgrade, to anywhere, realizing that I have to really, really help people be culturally sensitive. You know, one of the things that I think is so beautiful about the world is that there's so many different cultures, languages, and despite the fact that things are all normalizing through the internet, you know, getting everyone to realize, you know, I've come from Europe and then come to the US. It's less of a challenge now, but I got a lot of frustration through getting people to understand that cultures are important.
Yeah. So culture as the element, additional element, let's say. And
yeah,
like you mentioned before, you know, I mean, we went through the really global picture in a way, but still, you know, especially in this pandemic time, we really appreciate that they can also locally take care of food or some other things, you know, that's not everything is really globalized totally. Yeah. And here also on this personal questions, let's say, I would ask also, if you look this as a superpower, let's say, what keeps you going through your toughest days? I know you really appreciate passion. Is that passion your superpower, or how would you put it? What keeps you going?
Yeah, so I try to be passionate about everything I do. You know, whether it's, you know, my family, my football team, my dogs, my business. I believe that if you're going to do something, do it with passion and obviously drive, and that also drives a positive mental attitude. So what really gets me continually able to wake up every morning and feeling good is that, first of all, I've got the pleasure of having a great family and living in a great part of the world, but also I can be passionate to myself. I can get passion with customers, and I can get passion with employees. So I think passion, particularly again in the toughest days of the pandemic, where we're all sitting through a two-dimensional screen, it's less easy to be passionate, but I continue to do that. And then coupled with that is also being realistic, which is that realizing that you can do your best, and sometimes your best is not good enough. So do your best and then learn to figure out how to do even better next time. So continuing to learn. So it's this combination of passion and being humble enough to know that you can only do your best.
Yeah. And if you look forward, actually, what is giving you inspirations? What's your, for example, must read or watch or listen? How do you inspire yourself?
Yeah, so I can actually bring that right up to date. We start, being involved in this industrial world over the last year and a half during the pandemic. I've just seen some amazing things with companies on how they've actually worked through this pandemic. And we launched a few months back a series of podcasts, which is called Conquering Chaos. You can actually get it from pretty much all of the media outlets. And it's just the thoughts and experiences of senior executives in these industrial companies talking about how they've conquered chaos. And, from leaders from companies like Grupo Bimbo, the biggest bakery in the world, DuPont, one of the most iconic companies in the world, CMC Materials. So it's actually, listening to those or reading their blogs, which are out of the podcasts around, how are they conquering chaos? And, it's just inspirational to actually hear about frontline workers and how they think about digital. So it's really about, this whole series of Conquering Chaos podcasts and things. We sort of publish one every week or two, and I'm straight on listening to it because it is inspirational to hear people talking about, not just about my technology, actually that's a sub point, more about just how they're thinking about conquering chaos in this world.
That's great. I will check. That's really interesting to hear. Yeah. For the end, would you like to nominate maybe some leader that you would like to hear, on FastForward in the future, whom to invite, let's say, to talk with?
For you,
yeah,
is that what you're
saying?
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I could shoot the bar really, really high, and say, Joe Biden. How about trying to get Joe Biden onto it? That would be interesting. I think it would be actually quite interesting to see if we can get an industrial leader to talk about, how digital is impacting, not about Parsable, but just so many people have a view about digital and IT being more for so I think that would be an interesting one, is to get an industrial leader, could be big, could be small, from any country, to talk about, how they are, working forward.
Yeah. That's right. I mean, and there's so much marketing around B2C in a way that we forget all the B2B that's behind to make it happen. To come up with products, actually machinery that's needed, that B2C can follow. Yeah. Great.
Good.
I would say that's more or less all the questions. Thank you very much for sharing the knowledge. I really enjoyed some of the inputs. Maybe just for the end, to ask about HTEC, a question or two. How do you see the HTEC now? We are having a strategic meeting, so sometimes I just have to ask, at the end, what's your perception? How do you see how much, perception is probably through Alex and quite few inputs, that you get.
Yeah, so I think, we as a company have a great belief in building, relationships with companies that can help us accelerate the delivery of our platforms. And, we fundamentally believe that if you can figure out a blend of your own resources and external resources, you can absolutely, deliver a great outcome and accelerated outcomes. It's all about acceleration. Pulling that off is always very, very difficult, especially when you think about geographies, cultures, aligning around that. One of the, final things that I would say is that, HTEC, better than most technology partners that are providing, technology services, makes an extra effort to try to understand the culture of our company. So, when I talk to some of our engineers and some of our engineering leadership that works with HTEC, I could almost close my eyes and it sounds like they're talking about a colleague in Europe, not a not a partner. So I think your ability to sort of blend into our culture, and then of course it's about on time, on quality delivery, and that's another key thing that we've seen early in the relationship.
Yeah, HTEC has been growing, let's say, from 230 people in January last year to more than 800 now in April. So speeding up, let's say, the development. It's interesting, actually, when I also joined, it's in a way, people are not paid by time, but paid by added value. How with developing a lot of this HR programs, we figure out actually how people are actually the core of everything what we do, how they can add value. And many times you can see, like, we can call it even as a pet project, with people are thinking, what could be the second or the third level of problem that the client can come up, so sometimes for fun, they develop things, what is the next challenge that can happen, in advance, even before being demanded by the client. So this was really amazing to see, how even they can make a small PhD around the button, in a way, so just to try to find the best options, in advance. Good. That's all. That's a short question. So I don't know if you met before. I saw you also World Economic Forum with Matthias Lufkens. We had a company together. I don't know if you met.
Oh, wow.
With, social director social media director in. So I was in Davos 14 years ago, a long time ago. And then he said, let's Europe is not covered in this part of the world and some of the things. And I said, okay, let's help you and for the great cause and with some good, interesting things to support also World Economic Forum.
Got it. Good. Yeah. Well, great to catch up, and I've enjoyed it. And
thank you very much.
Very late there.
Yeah.
But enjoyed it. Thank you.